Full-size electric 7-seat SUVs are something of a rarity. With the Tesla Model X now left-hand drive only, your options for now are the vastly expensive Mercedes EQS SUV, a van-type EV, or this, the new Kia EV9. With 6 or 7-seat layouts, nearly 350 miles of electric range, and prices from £65,000 to £76,000, it is a bold new design and a bold new price range for the Korean brand. But there is another rival that might pique your interest if you're after an electrified, full-size 7-seat family SUV. And that is this, the Volvo XC90. Now, this is not a full electric car, this is a plug-in hybrid, but it has just been updated, so you now get up to 41 miles of pure electric running, and it's also now got a Google-based infotainment system, and it will be on sale for the foreseeable future, even though the XC90's been around for a long time, and even though Volvo is introducing an all-new pure electric 7-seat SUV this year called the EX90, which will also be a rival to the Kia, but that new EX90 is going to be a lot more expensive than the Kia, a lot plusher. And so for the foreseeable, if you want a 7-seat Volvo, well, this is the one for you. With a full EV and a plug-in hybrid, we are no doubt comparing apples and oranges here. But the Volvo costs a similar price at £70,000 to £83,000 across the range. And if you want all the seats and all of the luxury in an electrified SUV, then these are likely to be the two options on your rather short list. The EV9 is, of course, the new contender. Base Air models get 200 brake horsepower and rear-wheel drive for an official range of 349 miles, while the rest of the range, including the range-topping GT Line S that we've got here, gets all-wheel drive, 379 brake horsepower and rings 313 miles from the 99.8 kilowatt-hour battery. As for how it looks, well, Kia describes the EV9 as having rock-solid geometry, complete with a distinctive upright headlight design that's dubbed the digital tiger face. I'd describe it as obnoxiously modern, really, and that is definitely something that you're either going to love or you might hate. The one good thing about the Kia being so massive is that you get loads of space inside, which really, let's face it, is why anybody's going to buy this car. So, it is of course a 7-seater as standard, or you can have this as a 6-seat layout as well. We've got the 7-seat version here. And as you can see, the boot is absolutely vast. It's quite a high load lip, I will say that, but there's masses of space in there for everything. And you've got these very fancy seats here, electric adjustment, and even with these seats up, you've got 333 litres of space, which for some context is bigger than quite a lot of Super Minis boots. So it's like having a whole car boot in the back there, even with 7 people sat in there. So you've got space for a buggy and some soft bags. It's really useful. And you've got a cubby under the bonnet of the car too, which is ideal for storing your cables. But of course, the main reason that most people go for a huge 7-seater like this is because they're going to use those seats a lot. So what is it like in that third row of the Kia EV9? Well, access is good because you've got an automated system here which slides this seat right forward. So there's loads of space to get in. And when you're sat in here, do you know what? It's really not bad. You've got cup holders. There's even a light up here, which is great. And air vents, that's really important. And there's even a charging point too. So it is really comfy. You do have to sacrifice a bit of legroom in the middle row to have enough knee space back here, I would say that. But generally, do you know what? I think if you need to carry 7 adults, the Kia is one of the best SUVs out there. The middle row of seats slide and recline and give you absolutely tons of space, even if the seats have been slid forward. It really is a very spacious place to be. Plus, there's charging points and climate control for those in the back too. Equipment in the Kia really is very generous. Even in the entry-level model, you still get vehicle-to-load charging so that you can charge all your devices from the high-voltage battery if you want to. Plus, you've got loads of other equipment, basically everything that you want, even in the entry-level car, including heated seats in here and in the middle row, which is great. But I think most people are going to go for the GT line because you have to go for that if you want 4-wheel drive. Plus you get your bigger wheels, sort of upgraded styling. And if you go for the GT Line S, the top spec car that we've got here, well, that gets you the panoramic sunroof, the head-up display, upgraded seat adjustment, loads of stuff. So I think that's probably still going to be the most popular trim. Not only that, but of course you also get a really impressive infotainment system in every EV9. So you get a 12.3-inch screen behind the wheel, gives you all your readouts. You can change the layout of that too. Plus you've got your main 12.3-inch touchscreen in the centre here. That's got all of your features on here that you want. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, but they're not wireless, so you'll have to remember your cable. You do get sat-nav, Bluetooth and all the other features that you expect, plus the very smart touch-sensitive shortcut keys beneath the main screen. We actually found it a bit confusing to get used to the system in the Kia initially. The system in a Tesla or even the system in the Kia EV6 is a bit more intuitive, but with time you do get used to it. And you don't have to rely on that climate control screen to change the temperature because you've got voice commands, or there are some excellent straightforward buttons on the dash. So, the Volvo XC90. Well, this thing has been around since 2015, so that's quite a long time for a new car model, but it is testament to the original design that I think this still looks really fresh. It has had a couple of facelifts, really mild sort of tweaks to the design, but I still think it looks really smart. Very clean. I think arguably boring maybe compared to the Kia, which is really striking and standout design. The Volvo, you could argue it's classier, you could argue it's boring. It's really a case of opinion, isn't it? It's whatever suits you. But certainly I think the Volvo looks pretty smart to my eyes anyway. Not only that, but it's also actually still really good inside. As with the Kia, the Volvo has got a massive boot that'll serve even the most outdoorsy family well. But next to the Kia, there is a fraction less space behind the third row. Still pretty good though, and absolutely huge, plus a completely flat load bay if you drop those back seats. So let's find out what it's like in the third row of the Volvo. So you do have a nice easy manual adjustment for the seat there, but there is nowhere near the space to get into these back seats that you get in the Kia. Access is much harder in the Volvo. But when you're back here, do you know what? It's really not too bad. You do have enough legroom if you're a sort of average sized adult like me. I'm 5'7". It's not too bad. And you've got your air vents, you've got a little cup holder here. There's no charging port like there is in the Kia. And I have to say, in truth, they're narrower seats back here. There's not quite as much headroom. It all feels a bit more enclosed. Really, in this car, these feel like kind of occasional seats that you're going to want to put the kids in. An adult will be fine for a short journey. In the Kia, it feels like you can do 7 adults up for a long journey and they'll be absolutely fine back here. So definitely, if you want 7 adults regularly, the Volvo probably isn't the best SUV out there. There's not much to complain about in the Volvo, which also gets a huge amount of space for the middle row occupants, not quite as much as in the Kia, but still plenty by any standards. Plus, the seats slide and recline individually, and you get climate control and heated outer seats. I absolutely love it up front in the Volvo, but I would add that if I were to pay a car manufacturer to design and furnish my living room, it would be Volvo, because I just love the materials they use. I love the colours and the textures, and I just love that sort of unmistakably Scandinavian finish that you get. It's just lovely. Even though the XC90 is quite an old car, it doesn't feel old. And I would also add that I think the Volvo's got the more comfortable seats than the Kia. 4-way adjustable lumbar support as standard, and it's just really nice ergonomically. So I think it's a lovely driving position, really nice materials that definitely feel a bit classier than in the Kia. And yeah, the interior is definitely a big selling point for the Volvo. You also get really good equipment comparable to the Kia, which is not bad at all. So whichever of the trims you go for in the Volvo or the Kia, you're probably not going to add too many options. If there is anything that dates the Volvo, probably the infotainment system. The Google-based software on the Volvo is a real crowd pleaser, with all the straightforward usability of Google Maps that most of us are used to. The screen is fast to respond and has good graphics too, but the menus aren't always that easy to find, and to be honest, the system is one of the things that does date this car compared to the Kia. So, enough of the practicality stuff, let's talk about how these cars drive, and I'm going to start with the Kia. Right, you're talking about a 2.6 tonne car that has got 700 Newton metres of torque here. It is very powerful and it will do 0 to 62 in 5.3 seconds. It is not slow and you get a real slug of power. It's quite incongruous. It doesn't feel like this car should have that much power, but it does, and it's quite fun in its own way, even if, I'll be honest, I don't really think it needs that much power, and I think you're very rarely going to use it. Because this is just a car that's much more at home, kind of mooching about really, being nice and relaxed and nice and chilled, and that's where its real strength is. It's got air suspension all round. I have to say the road surface on this road is really terrible. You can probably hear it thumping away. Most of the time this car's really quite quiet, suspension and otherwise, and that sort of refinement is a real speciality. It's just really nice and relaxing and sedate. I like the fact that the brake regen is very adjustable. You control it with the paddles here, you can have it adaptive or not. That's great. I think Kia have nailed that. Nice progressive throttle response. There is quite a lot of body movement, but actually I think this is probably better controlled than in the Volvo. I think the Volvo is slightly more wallowy, which is surprising. The Kia actually controls itself reasonably well in corners. It's not a car that you're going to really want to drive in a very sort of spirited fashion, but it does a reasonable job when you do. So I think the Kia does a really good job, really. For a car this enormous, it controls itself very well. As for charging in the EV9, this gets an impressive 800 volt electrical system so that you can charge at 210 kilowatts for an 80% charge in under 25 minutes, despite the huge battery. However, despite the standard heat pump, in winter you should expect to see around 220 miles to a charge if our experience of the EV9 in crispy winter conditions is anything to go by. Do expect that to climb up to around 260 to 280 miles per charge in the summer. So, the Volvo then. Do you know what? This is really lovely to drive. It's quite a different thing to the Kia. So obviously this is a plug-in hybrid. So we know that it's got a petrol engine, 2 litre, 4-cylinder, supercharged and turbocharged. Plus, of course, you've got that battery and the electric motor, which is mounted on the rear axle. So short of having, you know, some kind of enormous fan on the back of this car is pretty much force-induced in every possible fashion. It's quite cool. And we're in electric mode at the moment, and it really does sort of hum along really nice and quiet. And there's nothing about this car, the way it drives, that makes it feel old. I do think that's quite impressive. It's just lovely. Really chilled. As with the EV9, actually, it's not a car that you want to drive quickly, even though you can. I mean, this thing's got over 400 brake horsepower and will do 0 to 62 in much the same time as the EV9, so 5.4 seconds. Not bad, is it? And interestingly, if you do wake up that petrol engine, it makes a fantastic noise. In the background, it's not very in your face, but it does really burble away. So there's character to the Volvo, and it's also quite gentrified. It's sort of got that kind of wallow to it, and you know, you just want to mooch along and enjoy yourself and not drive too quickly and take life slowly. And I think that's exactly what most families will want from this car. It's really comfy, really easy to drive. You've got all of the control over the hybrid systems that you want, so you can have it in pure EV mode, you can leave it in hybrid and it does its own thing. You can also tell it to charge the battery with the petrol engine, but that will have a hit on economy, of course. So it's clever stuff. It's got all the features that you want. In terms of the kind of range you're going to get from this car, well, I think in reality you'll be very lucky to see, you know, 41 miles out of it. I think in practice more like sort of 28 up to about 36 miles as an absolute best. In terms of economy, this is the problem with plug-in hybrids, isn't it? Because it's how long is a piece of string. It absolutely depends on how you use it. If you charge this car regularly and only do shorter journeys, well, you might see incredible economy. You might barely ever need to use the petrol engine at all, which means that you can use off-peak electricity rates and have really, really cheap running costs. But if you do use it for high mileage, which most plug-in hybrid drivers will, then you're actually probably not going to see much better economy than you'll get in one of the mild hybrid diesels that you can get in the XC90. It's a bit of a quandary in that respect with plug-in hybrid. So for instance, I had one of these previously and did a drive of, it's about 120 miles, I think. Started with a full battery, and I think we managed about 43 mpg. And that's not bad for a car with this sort of performance and, you know, this big. This is still it's 2.3 tons, this car, it's not light. But is that good enough to justify the cost, given this is a lot more expensive than a mild hybrid petrol or diesel equivalent? Well, that's really up to you, your lifestyle and how you buy it. Even so, I really like the XC90 and I really like the way it drives. It's a really nice thing. I think actually it's just as pleasant as the Kia, if not a little bit more. Charging in the Volvo has been upped from 3.6 kilowatts to just over 6 kilowatts as of the 2023 update, so you can now charge the battery in 5 hours from a standard 7 kilowatt home charger. It won't charge any faster than that, no matter how powerful the charger may be that you plug into, as this is dictated by the hardware in the car. So we've got to that point where we need to decide which one of these two cars is best. But before we do that, I want to talk about the money side of things, because this isn't really just a question of which of these cars better fits your lifestyle in terms of the powertrain. It's really about how you're buying the car as well. Now, retail buyers are almost certainly going to be paying monthly for these cars, whether it's leasing or PCP. And it's a big disparity in price on these two cars in that respect. So the Kia, even if you've got a £5,000 deposit, you're going to be paying around £1,200 per month. It is not cheap. The Volvo, on the other hand, well, there are quite a lot of deals out there. There's some low interest offers, or you can go for a more subscription-based deal where it's about under £900 deposit and then the same per month. So there really is a big saving to go for the Volvo. So if you're a retail buyer, that might be a big incentive in favour of the Volvo. However, even more people driving these cars are probably going to be company car drivers. And if you're paying benefit in kind tax, well, the Kia is the much cheaper option. So that is actually just over £500 per year in the tax year 23-24 for the Kia, whereas the Volvo is £2,000 more than that per year if you're a 40% taxpayer. So there really is a big disparity depending on how you're paying. So that may well be what clinches it for these two cars. But if it comes down to lifestyle, well, I have to say, the Kia really is the better of these two cars. I really like the XC90 and I can absolutely see why you'd go for it. I think Volvo is just, it's a masterclass in a sort of quality interior finish and classy, understated design. I love it. But the Kia is so much more spacious inside in many ways and just a bit more versatile and easier to use. The seats are a little bit easier to adjust and slide and tilt and all of that stuff. The infotainment system's better, it feels much more modern. So I do think that the Kia's got all of that going for it. Plus you might argue that the pure EV aspect makes it a bit more future-proof, but I can absolutely see why a lot of people might not yet be ready for the transition to EV, and for that, then the plug-in hybrid really is tempting. So it really does come down to your lifestyle and how you're buying. Both of these cars are great, but if I had to pick one, well, I would go for the Kia. Don't forget to head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, including loads of great electric cars. And while we've got you, please do like the video, subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel, and turn your notifications on so that you don't miss any of our videos.